You know how in the best stories, there's always that moment of absolute despair right before the huge, triumphant victory? Well, today we're breaking down a sermon from Pastor Stephen Wilhoit that looks at one of the most important moments in history as the ultimate comeback story, the journey from crushing sorrow to an unshakable joy.
Right, so the pastor kicks things off with this idea we can all get behind. We love a comeback story, don't we? The underdog who somehow pulls it off against all odds. And this very structure, he says, is the key to unlocking the powerful message Jesus gives his followers right before his crucifixion.
So here's the core idea of the whole thing. It's not just that joy comes after sorrow. The sermon's big point is that in this story, sorrow actually becomes the very thing that magnifies the joy that follows. It's a pretty wild concept. So let's see how he breaks this down, starting with what was so confusing to the disciples in the first place. Okay, so the story starts with a real puzzle. Right before everything is about to go down, Jesus says something that just leaves his best friends completely baffled, and it sets the stage for the incredible sorrow that's about to hit them. These are the words that kicked it all off. Just imagine your leader, the person you've left everything to follow, says this to you. In a little while, you won't see me, and then in a little while, you will. I mean, what does that even mean? The disciples are just whispering back and forth, trying to figure out what on earth he's talking about. So how do we solve this riddle? Well, the pastor explains that what Jesus said is actually working on two different timelines, two horizons. In the immediate, near term, he's talking about the 3 days between his death and his resurrection. But he's also pointing to something much, much bigger, the long-term reality of his ascension into heaven and his promise to one day return. So the small, immediate comeback is really a preview of the ultimate one. Now, before you get to the joy, you have to go through the sorrow. And to get his disciples ready for the kind of intense pain they were about to face, Jesus uses this incredibly powerful and deeply human analogy.
And Jesus does not sugarcoat this at all. He tells them straight up, you are going to weep. You are going to lament. And to make it even worse, the world, the very systems that are against him, they're going to be celebrating. It's going to look and feel like a complete and total defeat.
And here it is, the heart of the analogy. Jesus compares their coming sorrow to the pain of childbirth. It's an anguish that's incredibly real and all-consuming, but it's a productive pain. It's a pain with a purpose that leads directly to a joy so profound, it actually makes you forget the suffering that got you there. So you can see there's a process here, right? First, there's the sorrow that the time has finally come. Then you have the actual anguish of labor. And then, finally, this overwhelming joy of new life. The key thing here is that the joy doesn't just replace the pain. It's literally born from it. Then the sermon kind of zooms out and shows us how this analogy isn't just about the disciples' personal grief. The Apostle Paul, writing later, uses the exact same imagery to describe all of creation. It's like the entire universe is in labor, groaning and waiting for its own redemption and renewal. And this brings us to the turning point in the story, the comeback. The sorrow isn't just forgotten. It gets transformed into a completely new kind of joy, one that has some really specific and powerful qualities. So what's the first thing that makes this joy so different? It's permanent. I mean, think about it. This is a joy that comes from seeing Jesus alive after he conquered death itself. If the ultimate source of all sorrow, death, has been defeated, what could possibly take that joy away? Nothing. And Jesus makes this promise explicit. This isn't just some temporary happiness that can get snatched away when things get tough. He says, no one will take your joy from you. It's secure. It's eternal. This isn't just happiness we're talking about. It's a whole different category of joy. So, okay, this joy is permanent, but how do you actually get it? How do you experience it to the fullest? The final part of this sermon gets really practical, and it reveals a massive shift in how the disciples and all believers can relate to God. Remember how the disciples were too afraid to even ask Jesus what he meant? Yeah, that's problem number one. But problem number two is even bigger. Soon, he's not even going to be physically there to ask at all. And Jesus provides the solution for both of these problems. And here's the new reality. Before the cross, there was a limit. The disciples couldn't really pray in Jesus' name in the way that was about to become possible. The cross, resurrection, and ascension, that whole sequence is the turning point. It changes everything. It gives them, and all believers, direct access to God the Father. And the result of using this new access? The result is that your joy may be full. But what does it even mean to pray in my name?
The pastor makes it super clear that it's not some magic phrase you just tack onto the end of a prayer. It's about your position. It means you're praying from a place of being united with Christ, where your own desires start to line up with His. It's about relationship, not just reciting a formula.
And there you have it. The comeback story is complete. The sermon brings it all home with these 3 points. The sorrow you go through isn't wasted. It's actually the seed that grows into joy. That joy is eternal. No one can take it from you. And through this direct relationship with God in prayer, that joy can be completely full. So this all leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. If the deepest joys we experience are actually magnified by the sorrows that came before them, how does that change the way we look at hardship in our own lives? It definitely doesn't make suffering easy, but it does reframe it, not as the end of the story, but as the necessary setup for the comeback.